Hey there, all. Flip Fisher coming at you. Hey, for anybody that doesn't know who I am, I've written a lot of Steeler articles over the last 5 years or so. And a big focus of them, especially in the off season, has been the Steelers salary cap. Now, that's what we're going to look at today is where does the Steelers really stand with the salary cap? Oh, you're getting fed a bunch of bull on some of these articles. And it's really quite frustrating because some of these articles are being put out by people who really don't understand. Or they're trying to make things more rosy than they actually are. I find that insane why people do that. So I'm looking at, here's a quote from Michael Beck in an article that he wrote. And, I get it. It's easy to make $50 or $70 million to spend in free agency when you don't look at expenses. Or when you don't really talk that much about who you're going to cut. And you don't even mention about how the roster looks now. Now, while I'm going to get into some of that stuff in subsequent videos, what we're going to focus on is, do we really have $50 million to spend in free agency? Do we really have $70 million to spend in the free agency? And the answer is no. Because, we all know that when we get our paychecks, do we have all that money to spend on whatever we want? No. We got to spend it on bills. Or, oh my gosh, that pesky food thing, got to do that. Let's hop over here. Let's look at this real quick. The salary cap is actually going to come in at $208 million. Okay, all right. I'm good with that. What Over the Cap is doing here is they've already taken everything that is coming, like our carryover from this year. That's in this figure. The dead money from a couple of players and even more, that's included. The void contracts with Juju, Big Ben, and Ebron, they're all in there, and it's their full values. So we're looking at over, $10 million worth void years in Big Ben's contract, void money. That's all there, every dime of it. So that's already taken care of. When OTC is showing $42 million, that is our expenses right now, for the most part. And why I say that for the most part, we're going to get into some of the finer stuff in a little bit. He's got that there's 43 players under contract. Well, right now they actually are. Big Ben is still under contract for next year. So is Ebron and Juju and Witherspoon. They're under contract. But those contracts are all going to expire right after the Super Bowl. So they'll actually come off our books, unless they're reworked. And that reworked part, that's going to be for another video. So keep that in mind. Be sure to be checking back. We got our $42 million here. But that's not really true, is it? Because what happened today is we just signed 12 guys from our practice squad. These fantastic NFL specimens that they are. We brought these guys because we could. Season's over. Their contracts are over. We got to sign them to the regular roster to get to 51. Well, people like Becker, they're ignoring that. Okay. So this is where Over the Cap comes in. Over the Cap says, hold on. You've got to account for effective cap space. You got to look at it at being 51 players And I'll explain here in a little bit why they only look at 51. So they're looking at 33 million, but we're not going to look at it that way. We're going to look at it a little bit differently. We're going to make it look easier because we're going to ignore the rule of 51 in the offseason. We don't care about the rule of 51 because come next September, we got to have 53 players on a roster. And we got to have money for 53 players on the roster. So I'm going to just ignore that rule of 51 because that's how I roll. All right. Right now, we have $42 million in cap space. But we just brought those 12 players in that are going to be, let's just say $10 million. Because that's what it's going to be, give or take, for those 12 players. And once OTC updates their site and shows those guys, it's going to be around that. That's where we get around $32 million. Well, that's not where we stop, though, is it? Because we get down to the 32 million, well, we got to have a 52nd and 53rd. Okay. Let's bring those guys in. And that's going to drop it down to 31.4 million, but at least now we're at 53 players. Well, we got the draft. We got our superstars for years to come being drafted in April. We got to account for them. Now, while they cost $8 million, you got to remember every time you add a player to the roster, once you add a player, one of these guys, one of these low-ranking guys are going to drop off and become the 54th player, 55th player. So that's what happens with the NFL draft. And so not that entire $8 million is not going to count. Only 3.4 million of it will count because of the displacement. Moving a player off the top 53, they're displacing them. So that takes our cap down to 28 million. That's what we have to spend. Well, 28 million is not that bad to spend in free agency, is it? We could find some good players. We could sign a pretty good quarterback for we could sign a really good quarterback for 28 million. Whoa. Hold on there. We don't have $28 million yet. Because now we got to talk about, well, the carryover money. To all teams do this. All teams have a certain amount of money that they carry from one season to the other. And it's all to deal with in-season expenses. When you call up a player from the practice squad to the 53-man roster, you need money to do that. Because they're not they're more expensive playing on the regular roster. And I'll talk about that here in a second. Or let's say you actually make a trade during the season. You bring in a more expensive player. Well, you need money to do that. So you always got to kick back some money. When I first started looking at salary cap stuff, we usually kept about $3.5 million. Now, last year expenses went up because of the new collective bargaining agreement. So I figured the Steelers would roll with about $7 million. Now, they had about $10 million or so. Maybe it was more than that. And they finished the season off with about $7 million, I believe. The expenses are going up every year with the CBA. And they're going up quite a bit, actually. Quite a bit. What I'm saying here is you can't go off the $3.5 million or the $5 million figure. And right now, I'm going with a $7 million figure. Now, I think that's going to be high. Could we get away with $5 or $6 million? Maybe. But I'd rather take too much out of the pie than not have enough. So while the Steelers are generally conservative, so I wouldn't be surprised if the figure was around 7 million as well. Well, gosh, there goes our 28 million. Now we're down to 21 million. Well, we could get some good, maybe not as good a quarterback. You know, we're not going to get Aaron Rodgers anymore, are we? Now we're looking at, gosh, can we afford Teddy Bridgewater? Can we? Maybe he's too much. What about Jameis Winston? Is he going to be cheaper than Teddy Bridgewater? Oh boy, maybe we got to look at Jacoby Brissett or Tyrod Taylor, or maybe we just have to really roll with Rudy. But wait, we got more to take out. We got those practice squad guys that I was just talking about. We got to take them out. Let me show you a terrible, terrible thing that the NFL has done for these practice squad guys. Not terrible at all. They're finally actually paying these guys a decent wage for what they do. These guys are now, if I would find the right article here, these guys are now actually going to make some good money. This is so these are for rookies, undrafted guys, whatever. 7th rounders that couldn't cut it. They get signed to the practice squad. That's a $2,000 bump per week. Per week for 18 weeks. They pay them for every week. So that's a $2,000 bump just for those guys. Now let's look at the veterans. Now 2023, $15,400. That's their salary. Now, that's not a whole lot, is it? Well, not really. And, they show the max here, 20,000. And will some teams pay that max? I don't see the point in it. We're looking at 16 guys. That's how many players are on a practice squad now. 16 guys. For 18 weeks. Now, what I did was I split the difference. I went with 13,000. Too high, too low, whatever. I just split the difference. And I came up with, a pretty hefty amount that I was actually surprised. And the amount that I'm going to go with is $4 million. This past year, the figure I used was around 2.7 million. But I was definitely wrong. Now, I'm a little concerned that I might be even low on going with the 4 million. But that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with 4 million for just the practice squad guys. Just for the 16 guys, 18 weeks. Woof. Well, that's it. $17 million. That's what we have left. So we went from 42 million. Or we went with, Beck's 50 to 70 million. You pull out these expenses, and that's what you get. You get $17 million. Whoa. That's crazy low, isn't it? That's terrible. We couldn't even afford Aaron Rodgers, let alone all of our myriad of issues. How many free agents would we get for $17 million? How many of our current free agents would we get back for $17 million? Well, that's when you got to start swinging the axe. And that's exactly what I'm going to get into with my second segment of this. How do you fix that? How do you fix a team that is devoid of talent next year? We are sitting on, here's our free agents. This is what I'm going to get into next, is how do we sign some of these guys that we might want? How do we go get Juju? If Juju wants $6 million, could we do that? Could we get him? How? How do we re-sign Ray McCloud? And you go, before you go, I hate Ray Ray. Ray was the 4th best punter in the league and 9th best kickoff return guy. Before you say, we could replace him, think about all the people that complained about Ryan Switzer. Blah. Everybody complained about him. And now we got a return guy, and now people want to say, let's get rid of him. No. Let's bring back Joe Hayden. Let's give that guy like $5 million. Holy cow, he just got his hiney handed to him. By the Chiefs, 4th wide receiver? That guy's like their 6th target on that team? And Joe Hayden gets smoked. No, thank you. Not when we have $17 million left. There it is. Now that I've destroyed your world, made you cry a little bit, maybe. Now that you've thrown stuff at me, be on the lookout for the next video when I show how we fix all these issues. Well, not all of them, because we can't fix all of them. We can only fix some of them. We can start cutting off the fat at least and see if we can get to a certain point where we have cap space to go after Jameis Winston or Teddy Bridgewater. But we don't have the cap space for Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. Let's not fool ourselves here. Okay, all. Well, this has been Flip Fisher. If you found any of my cap stuff remotely interesting, and hopefully you did, be sure to give me a thumbs up and by golly, subscribe so you get notified when I put up the video of now who do we cut? Now who do we get rid of? And also the video on how we get very, very creative on making cap space. But it will come at a big expense. All right, all. Well, this has been Flip Fisher. Thank you very much for listening, and I will catch you later.